Namaste, Sakshi Telugu Prajala Manasakshi. Welcome to special immigration show. Today we are back with our expert attorney Bhanu B. Lindra Garu, BBI Law Group, PC 17 years of experience in law offices. So if you have any questions regarding immigration, feel free to call us. Our attorney will be glad to answer your questions. So before we begin the show, please note that the information provided on the show not a legal advice, it's just for information purpose only. So Sakshi TV or its agents will not be responsible for this. If you need any specific legal advice, please contact the attorney directly. And without any further delay, let's begin the show. Hello, Bhanu Garu. Welcome to the show on the. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Prasanna Garu. Thank you for calling me back for the show again. Really pleasure to be here all the time.
So, Bhanu Garu, can you please provide information on law offices and also practice areas?
Definitely, Prasanna Garu. My name is Bhanu Lindra Andy. I'm an immigration attorney. I'm practicing immigration law in the US for more than 17 years. My firm name is BBI Law Group PC. I founded this firm in 2008, and we are around 20 employees overall in our company, in our firm, and we exclusively practice in immigration law, and we only represent in immigration matters, all types of immigration matters like employment-based immigration, family-based immigration, investor visas, and any other types of immigration matters that is required to be addressed within the United States. We are there basically. Recently we also expanded our practice to outbound cases also. So we represent even in outbound cases also. And if you need any further information, kindly feel free to visit our website www.bbilawgroup.com. Our office number is 703-496-7722. My email ID is bhanu@bbilawgroup.com. You can also reach us through our website. As I said, you can go to our website, you can actually click on our contact website page, and then you can actually schedule a time and appointment if you have any questions about the immigration law or any immigration matters which you need and help. We are here to help you all, and feel free to reach us anytime. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for the info, Bhanu Garu. So today we are going to talk about immigration updates. This is continuation to the last week episode, right? So before we get into the topic, do you have any latest updates in this week immigration?
Not much. As I said, there are not much updates this week. Anything, Andy, basically. Only thing is, as I said, the updates is that the curiosity among the public about the immigrant visa numbers, basically, whether how those numbers are going to move forward for them, and basically what is the impact they have, and how soon they can get a green cards and everything. They wanted to have a clear picture on that. I think that's a discussion is happening quite a lot in this week. And I'm very happy to discuss more in detail on this. As of now, nothing major updates this week. That's what I would like to tell you all.
Yes, sure, Bhanu Garu. So as you said, recently we have seen a rapid movement in immigrant visa numbers for Indian nationals, right? So what do you think is contributing to such forward movement?
Two things are contributing for such forward movements, Andy. First thing is that first and foremost thing is COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the consulates abroad are not functioning fully, basically, and also USCIS also is not functioning fully in the US also because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and because of their consulates are not functioning fully abroad. What's happening is that they're not able to adjudicate or issue family-based immigrant visas as frequently, as timely as possible, or in the numbers which they usually adjudicate under normal circumstances, basically. Because of that, there's a huge number of unused family-based visas are being available from fiscal year 2020 in the fiscal year 2021, basically. And they've been allocated to the employment-based categories, basically. And at the same time, as I said, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, USCIS also is not functioning fully, and they're also not issuing green cards to many people in the US, basically. Because of combination of both, not issuing green cards and also not issuing immigrant visas abroad, is contributing that these numbers are available. Basically, these visas are available to all the individuals. Therefore, accordingly, the Department of State is actually moving those immigrant visa dates aggressively forward. That's why you see that significant rapid or aggressively forward movement in the priority dates available for the individuals to file their adjustment of status or to get an immigrant visas abroad. That's why we are seeing this aggressive forward movement in the priority dates for Indian nationals.
Okay. So, Bhanugaru, do you expect dates to retrogressive again for EB2 and both EB3 category?
No, I don't, Andy. And also for next, I think at least for coming fiscal year FY 2022, at least for the first half of the fiscal year FY 2022 and the remaining fiscal year 2021, I don't expect the dates to retrogress. And the same thing was confirmed by Department of State official, also Charlie Oppenheim, in his conference call on May 24, 2021, basically. So the dates are not going to retrogress at all for the EB3 and EB2 in nationals. EB1 is not going to retrogress also. It's already current for the EB1 category. For EB2 and EB3, the dates are not going to retrogress. I'm very confident that those dates will be keep on moving forward, but not going to go backwards.
Okay. So also we know that two dates are published in Visa Bulletin, right? One final action dates and second one is filing dates, right? So what is the purpose?
See, there is a clear purpose when the Department of State made a regulatory change on how they would like to publish visa bulletins with the final action dates and the filing dates is basically because the purpose is basically to facilitate USCIS as well as the consulates abroad to start processing cases basically based upon the filing dates, basically, right? For example, let's assume that you have a final action date, which is basically the basis upon which they can issue a green card. Unless your final action date is correct, they can't issue a green card or they can't issue immigrant visa. However, in order to issue a green card or in order to issue an immigrant visa, there is a process which they have to go through. They have to collect the documents, they have to review the documents, they have to verify whether the individual is eligible for the benefit which the individual is seeking from the United States, basically, right? And it's a process, and that process always will take time because there are several steps involved in it, basically. And when they were only allowed to accept to the final action dates, by the time they collect the information and they process everything, the dates are either retrogressing or the visas are not being available to the individuals, basically. So what's happening? Huge backlog has been created, basically, because of that. So what Department of State felt is basically at the time is, okay, we will give the filing dates option for the Department of State, basically for the consulates and also to the USCIS, basically, and let them make a decision exactly what to do. But however, when they do the Department of State issue the filing dates, basically, what they will do is they will notify the National Visa Center, the consulates. They ask the consulates to notify the National Visa Center. What is National Visa Center is basically is that if somebody is seeking a visa abroad at the consulate, especially immigrant visa, family-based visa, employment-based visa, so what they have to do is basically is that once the I-130 or I-140 is approved, their file will be automatically forwarded to the National Visa Center. So National Visa Center is the one which actually collects all the information about the immigrant visa application, like DS-260 form, affidavit of support, all supporting documents, whatever it is. And then once they collect all that information, they're going to send all that package to the respective consulate post, wherever the individual is going to attend for the interview to get an immigrant visa, basically. So that is a process which they have to go through. So what they do is basically is that based upon the filing dates, Department of State actually notify the National Visa Center saying that you can actually start the processing. Ask the individual, basically, whose priority date falls in with these filing dates, actually, they can actually go and request them to pay the immigrant visa fee, collect the documentation, make it ready, and send the package to the consulates abroad so that consulates abroad will be ready to call them for the interview when their final action dates become current, basically. Same thing also is applicable to the US Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is USCIS, we call it basically, right? వాళ్ళకు కూడా సేమ్ పద్ధతి అప్లై చేస్తుంది కానీ ఇక్కడ యూఎస్ఏఎస్ ఏం చేస్తుంది ఇక్కడ లోకల్లో వాళ్ళు అడ్జుడికేట్ చేస్తారు ఈ కేసెస్ని బేసికలీ రైట్ అడ్జస్ట్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ స్టేటస్ దట్ మీన్స్ బేసికలీ ఏంటంటే ఫైలింగ్ డేట్స్ ప్రకారంగా ఒకవేళ యూఎస్ఏఎస్ విల్ స్టార్ట్ యాక్సెప్టింగ్ ద కేసెస్ ఈవెన్ దో their final action dates are not current. If the filing dates are current, individuals will be able to file their 485 adjustment of status application. However, USA said that they cannot be forced to take them based upon the workload they have and everything. Therefore, USCIS has been given a discretionary authority whether to accept 485s based upon the filing dates of the particular visa bulletin or not. So every month, USCIS will provide an update on their website how they're going to accept 485 applications based upon the final action dates or based upon the filing dates, basically. Okay. Therefore, that's where the different. That's the reason why they basically created two sets of dates in the visa bulletin, which is final action dates and the filing action dates, basically.
Okay. So, and one more thing is why USCIS does not accept cases pursuant to filing dates stated in visa bulletin. So, may I know the reason for that?
There are a couple of reasons, Bhaskar. I mean, it's basically as per the USCIS comments in various several FAQs or whatever it is. Basically, the reason why what they say that is basically is that they should be able to take the workload. Basically, for example, if they have enough number of sufficient cases, basically for the fiscal year for the particular visa bulletin month, and they are not in a position to take up more cases and accept those cases and adjudicate those cases in a timely fashion, then it's not worth for them to accept the cases based upon the filing dates, basically. Okay, we know that in October 2020, when they have an opportunity, when they don't have enough case workload for the 485 cases, basically, or a green cards, in October 2020, USCIS did open and did state that they're going to accept 485 cases based upon the filing dates. And because of that, many people where final action dates were in 2009 and 2010 for the EB2, EB3 category, but as they opened and they said that they're going to accept the filing dates until January 2015, in the beginning, basically, hundreds and thousands of people were able to file their adjustment of status applications who are waiting in queue for several years, especially from India. I'm talking about the Indian nationals because మన call తెలుగు వాళ్ళకి సంబంధించిన కాల్ కాబట్టి నేను ఇండియన్ నేషనల్ గురించి మాట్లాడుతున్నానండి ఇక్కడ. Okay, especially Indian nationals, basically, వాళ్ళకి hundreds of thousands of people are waiting in line for several years to file their adjustment of status, and they could not file it because final visa numbers were not available for them. Once the USCIS opened it at the time, because they have room to take the applications, hundreds of thousands of people were able to file the cases in the month of October, November, December of 2020, basically. So that's where it is, basically. The USCIS main reason is basically is that if we take cases based upon the filing dates all the time, we don't have enough room. We don't have enough space. We are already overwhelmed with all the casework which we have to timely adjudicate and properly adjudicate and properly make the decisions on these cases, basically. That's why under this discretion, every month to month, basically, USCIS will make a decision whether to accept the cases based upon the filing dates or based upon the final action dates.
Okay. So as you said earlier, recently Charlie opened up the US said that priority dates shall move forward aggressively, right? So what does he mean by that, and what do you think will happen?
I think, but the overall conversation I heard about his conference call, basically, what he meant by that is basically is that you're going to see similar kind of a movement with the priority dates what happened in the past few months. We have seen 3 to 4 months jump in the priority dates, basically, for EB2 category and EB3 category, basically. For EB2 category, almost 7 months it has been jumped, and EB3 category also something 4 to 5 months have been jumped, basically, right? So we're going to expect the same thing can happen until the fiscal year 2022, early of the fiscal year 2022 or mid of the fiscal year 2022. So my expectation is basically is that based upon what he meant by aggressive movement is in the next few months, you're going to see every month, 3 to 4 months forward movement of the visa categories in EB3 and EB2 category. And by October 2022, probably I think they will be reaching for EB3 category 2012 or 2013. And based upon how many cases have been adjudicated in the USCIS and other positions, basically based upon, I think the Department of State will determine how forward they can move the EB3 dates, basically. But my assumption is until mid of fiscal year 2022, the EB3 priority dates for Indian nationals and EB2 priority dates for Indian nationals are going to aggressively move forward. And the reason why they're going to move forward is even you will see so many unused EB1 category visas also which are going to spill out to the EB2 category. Therefore, you will see the movement in EB2 category also, and that's a good thing, basically.
Right. Now it's time for a small announcement, Bhanu Garu. So If you have any questions and also for any legal immigration services, and if you need any specific legal advice, you can contact Bhanu Garu through email or phone number also. Phone number is BBI Law Group and phone number is 7034967722. And email is bhanu@bbilawgroup.com. Website is www.bbilawgroup.com. So he is always ready to help you guys. Meeru contact cheyochu or email kuda cheyochu. And so Bhanu Garu, my next question is, how many visas shall be available for employment-based categories for fiscal year 2022?
That's a very good question, Andy. Basically, that's what everybody is coming in. Everybody is excited about this. The reason is, as per the Charlie Oppenheim, he said that more than 150,000 family-based visas are unused, basically, in fiscal year FY 2021. And those visas will be allocated to the next fiscal year under the INA guidance, basically, to the employment-based category. That means 290,000 employment-based visas will be available in the fiscal year starting of the fiscal year 2022. That means why it's 290,000 is 150 unused family-based visas plus regularly available 140,000 employment-based visas, basically. Therefore, it become 290,000 visas, basically. That's a significant number because you know that any country, any category, EB1, EB2, EB3 category, for each in this 28 in 290,000, there's a percentage on each category can be allocated, basically. The percentage of category can be allocated for each category, EB1, EB2, EB3 is 28.6%, basically. Literally speaking, and also there's a limit of 7% per country limitation of how many visas can be given in each and every category. So 7% of 28.6, 7% of 28.6, 7% of 28.6 for each category, they can issue the visas to the Indian nationals, basically. And as I said, 7% of 28.6% of 290,000 visas is a lot, basically, for in EB1 category. And in that 7% probably will come around to 20,000 to 25,000 visas for the Indian nationals, which won't be used, basically. In EB1 category, we don't have that much subscription for the Indian nationals. So those number of visas will be coming to Indian nationals again down the road. It's going to go down and it's going to come to that action. I could be wrong with the number, Andy, but the percentages I'm correct, but no wrong with the actual number. Something like that, basically. And those numbers can be given to can be allocated to the EB2 nationals because EB1s may not be used entirely, basically. So there'll be a huge set of visas will be available for EB2 category and EB3 category, and therefore people are excited that the dates can move forward, they can get a green cards and everything, all the stuff. But you have to understand this. People getting green cards will work in a different way for the dates moving forward. They both have an opposite effect, basically. If people are getting green cards, that means those visas are being allocated, those numbers are being used. If those numbers are being used, automatically the visa bulletin priority date tables will be adjusted accordingly. Therefore, less forward movement will be there based upon the number of cases will be adjudicated and everything, basically. So it's a very good thing, Andy.
Yeah. So when does fiscal year 2022 starts, Bhanu Garu?
Every time for any USCIS, for immigration purposes, whether it's a USCIS or the Department of State, basically for the consulates and everything, fiscal year starts, for example, fiscal year 2022, right? That fiscal year starts the prior year, October 1. That means it starts on October 1, 2021, fiscal year 2022, basically. So for the H1B, for the USA is also same, even for the Department of State also same. So it starts on October 1, 2021, fiscal year 2022. Fiscal year 2023 starts on October 1, 2022.
Okay. So, Bhanu Garu, I just want to know, do you know how many green cards are issued by USCIS and also immigrant visas in fiscal year 2021?
We do not know yet. Basically, USCIS has not released the numbers yet. So we do not know how many cases they've been issued and everything. Department of State never issues or tells how many immigrant visas have been issued at the consulates every year, basically. They won't even tell how many immigrant visa numbers have been utilized also in general. Department of State never does that. So it's impossible for us to know exactly how many green cards are being issued by the Department of State or with the USCIS under these circumstances, basically.
Okay. So what do you expect by the end of the fiscal year 2021? I mean, any expectations?
Yeah, as I said, the end of the fiscal year 2021, I think because of the aggressive forward movement in EB2 and EB3 category for the Indian nationals, basically, with the final action dates. And I'm expecting that EB2 will spill over mid of 2012 or the end of the 2012. That means basically final action dates can be around end of the 2012, December 2012, something like that by September 2021. And I'm expecting same thing with EB3. EB3 will be probably around my expectation end of the 2012 or middle of 2013 for EB3 category as well. So that is what I'm expecting for September 2021. That's a very significant or aggressively forward movement for this visa necessity. And also what I'm expecting is by the time I think USCIS, if things goes well with the vaccination and if the community develops herd immunity as planned, basically as aggressively as possible, then if required to take boosters or anything like that. But if the USCIS starts opening up its offices completely, and if it goes to with full throttle, that means what I mean to say by full throttle means with the full force of employment, full force of employees with USCIS, if they start going back to normal conditions, basically opening up fully and processing fully and everything, we are going to see number of people cases are going to be adjudicated within these priority dates to get the green cards by September 2021. And I'm hopeful that within the next few weeks, I think USCIS will start opening up completely and start working in a normal manner, basically what it has been before the pandemic.
Okay. So, Bhanugar, do you think it is good idea to downgrade I-140s for the individuals who have EB2 priority dates in 2015 and 2016 onwards?
It's a very subjective question, Andy. What I mean to say by subjective question is it depends upon each and every individual situation, basically. Okay. If their own criteria is to downgrade for the purpose of hoping that the dates will become current in the next fiscal year, therefore they can take advantage of that and get the file adjustment of state applications, then I think they should wait until the dates become current for them, basically. But there are other criteria, other reasons why they want to get into EB3, basically, just to be on the safe side, having both I-140s, EB2 I-140 and EB3 I-140 at the same time, so that they can take an advantage of either way. And then it's a good idea to downgrade, basically. So if you want to have both I-140s available for you in EB2 I-140 and EB3 I-140, and tomorrow, based upon the dates availability, you can file for adjustment of status in either one of those categories, then it's a good idea to downgrade. Okay? And also, what if the company is doing good well now, but you're worried that if the dates come current for you after 2-3 years, and if you want to downgrade at the time, then you may potentially have some issues with your employer, with the ability to pay and everything. So now you don't have that issue, then it's a good idea to file downgrade right now. Get that one sorted out, have EB3 I-140 also along with EB2 I-140 and keep it ready. So there are a lot of factors are there. As I said, it's a subjective matter upon which one can make a decision whether to file it in EB3 I-140 or not.
Right. Now it's time for another small announcement, Bhanugaru. So, yeah, for any legal immigration services, and if you need any specific legal advice, you can contact Bhanugar through phone number and email. Firm name is bbilawgroup.com and phone number is 7034967722. Email is bhanu@bbilawgroup.com. Website is www.bbilawgroup.com. So he's always ready to help you guys. So me call cheyachu and email kuda cheyachu. So Bhanugaru, in last week episode manam interfiling guరించి chala detailed ga briefly discuss chesam kada. So my question is, how common interfiling, sir? I mean, I'm wondering whether one can interfile from employment based to family based or vice versa.
Yeah, it's very common indeed. It's very common. It's very common to file interfiling. We do it all the time. Whenever there is a possibility and availability is there. You can actually interfile from employment-based to family-based and family-based to employment-based, vice versa, basically, right? And also, there are other categories also. For example, some people will be able to file I-360, domestic abuse cases, basically, or widow or US citizen or anything like that. Even those categories also can be interfiled, just not only family-based, employment-based, those categories also can be interfiled. It's a very common thing. We do that all the time. As I said, when you interfile, it has to be in writing. And there are certain things which we have to meet, right? I've given very detail last week. What are the points you have to have? What are the requirements you have to meet in order to interfile, right? For example, your visa numbers must be available. Basically, your immigrant visas must be available at the time you want to file an interfile. And also, you must be eligible for an adjustment of status. That means you've not violated any status or anything like that. You don't have any criminal record or anything like that, basically. And the process is continuous. That means your green card processing is continued. Nobody discontinued it or anything like that. Those are the criteria which you have to meet for the interfiling, which is very, very common thing to do. And it's a very normal thing to do. But as I said, interfiling, you requested for interfiling, you basically made a formal request in writing for interfiling. It doesn't mean that USCIS will do that interfiling, basically. It is up to the USCIS. It's completely under the discretion of the USCIS. Okay? You have to make it formal writing, request in formal writing for the interfiling, and the USCIS will see whether you're eligible for the adjustment of status and accept the interfiling on the date you make the request of that interfiling, basically, right? And those are the criteria which you have to understand. As you asked, it's a simple question you asked, and the simple answer is yes, it's very common, and nothing to worry about doing the interfiling.
Okay. So what are the rejected situations?
If see, interfiling can be rejected, but it doesn't mean that your 485 has been rejected, right? Okay. I mean, they may not accept interfiling, but still your 485 will be adjudicated based upon the petition, underlying petition, upon basis of which you file that 485 application. So if they don't agree for interfiling, you have an option to go ahead and file one more set of I-485 for that particular application or a petition, for that petition, basically, right? For example, you file I-485 with the I-140, but as I said, you married to your US citizen and your US citizen spouse actually sponsors you a green card if they file I-130. And if the interfiling is not successful for the I-130, the I-140 or 485, you can actually submit one more set of 485 for this I-130. And USCIS can actually adjudicate that 485 application for this I-130 and adjudicate your green card. And at the time, USCIS may come back sometimes USCIS come back and ask you, do you want to continue your green card processing with the employment-based also? And if you say yes, they will ask you to withdraw that one, and you withdraw that I-485, and you get a green card through your husband's family-based I-485, which you submitted a second set to the USCIS. So there's nothing major to worry about. If they don't accept interfiling, it's fine. You'll be able to file one more set of I-485 if needed.
Okay. So, Banu Garu, it's time to wind up the show. So, any golden immigration message to our viewers?
The golden message for the USCIS is basically is that I think this is the time, this is the administration time where people will have an opportunity to make their voices heard. I think if anybody is lobbying for any positive immigration laws, I think this is the time they need to go and voice themselves before the current Congress and the current administration, I think, if it comes to immigration, basically. And also at the same time, Indian nationals who have been waiting for so long in this country to file their adjustment of status or get the green cards, I think there is a silver lining or a ray of hope, basically you can call it, because we are seeing this significant rapid aggressive movement in the visa numbers for EB2 and EB3 category. And I think thousands of people will be able to get their green cards very soon. Instead of waiting for several years, I think now that has been accelerated to very quickly to 1 to 2 years instead of 20 to 30 years for many people. So that's a very good news. So all of you, I want you to be positive. That's very, very important, and be hopeful, and everything will be fine. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for your valuable time, Banu Garu. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Prasanna Garu. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sakshi TV and its team for welcoming me again for the show. I would love to now I became a part of your family, I believe. I hope you still consider me part of your family, and very happy to come back to the show and do the show again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Idi Valti special immigration show. Next week, Mali Kalsukundam. Stay tuned to Sakshi, Telugu Prajala Manasakshi. Namaste.